Hello, scrappers, recyclers, and investors. Welcome to Shark Scrapper Live, where we're going to spend about an hour talking about scrapping, recycling, the stocks that kind of revolve around that world, and business aspects associated with what we do. It is great to be here. I wasn't quite sure we were going to make it because about 15 minutes ago or so, we had a whopper of a severe storm roll through, and there's another wave that's coming in behind it. So if I disappear all of a sudden, it's not me being rude, it's Mother Nature not wanting to cooperate. And I mean, that was one heck of a storm that kicked in just a little while ago, coming through. Now they've been making some infrastructure improvements around here, so fortunately we did fine. But I just wanted to give everybody a heads up and a little bit of a warning. So welcome George's Random Scrapping Irish, Gaz, JR Cat, and Roger from CU Scrapping. It is great to see everybody here today. I am looking forward to having a lot of fun talking about some pretty interesting precious metals and industrial metals and stuff that's going on in the markets right now. I hope everybody had a great week. So if you want to go ahead and, just drop a little note in the comments how your week has been going, how your week went last week, and if you're anticipating having a good week moving ahead. And hopefully everybody's planning on having a good week, because it'd be really bad to be Sunday and looking at the week ahead going, I don't want to play. That would not be any fun at all. All right, well, let's get right into our precious metals discussion today. As you saw from the thumbnail, we're talking about silver. Now, once again, I am not sponsored by APMEX. I have used APMEX and other places to buy and sell physical gold and silver. So that's why I use them. I like their charts and their data. I do not believe in using paper precious metals like the certificates and stuff. I believe if I'm going to use silver and gold as part of my investment portfolio, I am going to do it through physical gold and silver, and APMEX is one of the places I've done that. So as we look at gold and silver, and do me a favor, if you would, somebody drop a note, please, because I don't see any activity on the scroll. Okay, there we go. Somebody just popped up. I just want to make sure that I hadn't lost internet there. Electronic Scrapper, welcome to the show. Okay, so silver. The 24-hour on silver is down a little bit. Hey, Earl, great to see you here. The week was hot and busy. Yep, I hear you with hot and busy. Oh, my God. We'll talk about heat in just a minute. Okay, so for the 24-hour period, silver's down. This is actually quite a bit of movement for a 24-hour period on weekend. So, the world doesn't just stop because it's the weekend. Stuff moves, and that's actually quite a bit of movement in the wrong direction for us. If we look at the 3-day, we see that silver is also down. And, I tell you, that is a relatively consistent kind of drop here. We had like this pattern going on around the drop, but yeah, overall it's just moving in the down direction. So not exactly what we want to see, although, for those of us that like to acquire physical gold or silver, these kind of downward trends are good buying opportunities. As we look at the week, we see that we had silver was trying to climb for a little bit during the week, and then, man, it just dropped off here. So, yeah, that happens. That's that's the joys of being in this game, right? And for the month, we see that we're up, not too bad, almost 10%, which is nice. For the 3 month, we are up about 3%. So again, overall, not too bad going on there. We did have this dip here. You know, if we connect here, kind of where we started, and we see that we're up, but if we drew a straight line across, you know, you'd see that we had this period where we were down before climbing back up again. Year to date, yeah, up 2%, almost, you know, around 2.5%. Nothing to write home about, nothing to get too excited about. For the 1 year, we're up 24%. So, you know, that's pretty cool. And for the 5 year, well, you know, 5 years up 46%, but you know, I mean, we've lived this, so we know we had this kind of going on back here. Then we kind of jumped up in September of 20, and we've been around that, but market has kind of been recovering a little bit. Again, this is what I like about this is what I like about silver. This is what I dream of with silver, is this kind of spike right here. That's why I have silver, and hopefully we'll see something like that develop again sometime in the future. Hard to say. So now, and this discussion of silver is interesting. It's going to be tied to something else that we're going to talk about a little bit later in this live stream, because some of you know, if you were watching my videos this week, you know that I recently sold a large quantity of lead, actually exchanged it for silver. And so now I'm going to protect, you know, who the buyer was, unless they choose to reveal who they were. I'm just protecting their privacy. But it's one of the things that becomes interesting whenever you make the decision to conduct a transaction in other than a standard monetary unit, like a dollar or a euro or something of that nature. When you transact that business or barter in other services or commodities, you are banking on both parties. Now, both parties are trying to decide what is that material worth that I want to buy, and what is the silver or the gold worth that I'm going to give in return for it. So in this case, my business associate and I were trading 545 pounds of lead for some quantity of silver. And first we had to decide what the lead was worth, then we had to decide what the silver was worth, so that we could come to an agreement on how much we were going to exchange for that. So it is always an interesting back and forth when you're trying to make those decisions. Much easier to do when you have some relationship with the person, you know each other, there's a certain level of trust that says, yeah, I'm not trying to take advantage of you. Let's just come to some agreement of what these things, what the fair market value, that's going to be an important term in a little bit in our discussion. So it's agreeing on what the fair market value of either end of that transaction is, so you can come to a decision. So very interesting when you do exchange products or you barter, how you make the decision on how much and what you're going to barter. All right, so lots of fun in silver going on. JR Cat is saying that love it being down first Wednesday of the month, going to the Coin Club auction. Yep, yeah, that's always a good time when it's down and you go to those auctions and things. You know, that's a good time to buy. When I see it get down into these levels, I'm making some head scratching decisions about if I'm going to do some buying. So always important to keep that in mind. All right. Well, our next discussion for the hour is our safety note for the week. Now we're going to, one of the things about safety, and this was something I learned in the Navy and when I was doing some manufacturing things in business, it's always important to continually repeat aspects of safety. If you can, you want to mix up how you repeat it, but you want to keep repeating it because we as humans can become lackadaisical, we can forget things, we can lose our concentration. So repeating aspects of safety is very important. That's why on a lot of manufacturing floors, you'll have a daily safety briefing before the shift starts. There was a time when I was running a crew of people that was loading cars on railroad cars, so automobiles that we would load and unload off of railroad cars. Every morning before the shift, we actually had two shifts, a morning shift, afternoon shift. So every day before each shift, we would have a safety briefing, and the safety briefing would cover, little things, differences, but we kept trying to reiterate a lot of the common themes. So today, yes, I'm going to talk about eye protection again. Eye protection is extremely important. We're born with two of these things. We can function somewhat with only one of them, but it's really hard to do what we do as scrappers and recyclers if we don't have any of them. So vision is an important part of being a scrapper or a recycler. You want to protect these little peepers the best you possibly can. I know it's easy to get in a, you're cranking along, you're busy doing something, and you reach over to grab your grinder to cut off that one little screw head. You forget to throw on your safety glasses. The next thing you know, you've got metal shards in your eye and you're on your way to the emergency room. So it's really important to just have in the back of your head all the time, should I be wearing eye protection? Now, when I was at a certain manufacturing facility, the basic rule was as soon as you went through a certain set of doors into the manufacturing side of the complex, you had to have the safety goggles on of some sort of eye protection. If you wore glasses, your glasses had to be approved by the EHS people, the safety folks, as being shatter resistant and stuff like that. This was extremely important because you never knew where on the manufacturing floor you might have a potential hazard. And at any given time, there could be 400 people out on the production floor. So it was very important that everybody have their eye protection on. Now, we as scrappers, especially when we're hobbyist scrappers, we don't always think about that. You don't always just put on your safety goggles and have them on the whole time you're working on something. Especially if you're in a place like down here in Florida where it gets freaking hot, and then you're sweating into these things and you got drips of water on them, and then the dust gets on them and now you can't see, and then that presents its own level of a hazard. So be realistic about wearing your eye protection. If you reach for a power tool, you should be thinking safety goggles, eye protection, hearing protection, something of that venue. What I do in the shark cage is my safety goggles are right there by my power tools. So if I go over to a power tool, I'm not talking about the drill, the driver that I use to take screws out. I'm talking about the grinder and the Sawzall. If I'm reaching for one of those, there's two types of eye protection right there. So there's no excuse for me to not grab them. And I physically put the grinder at the other side of the shark cage from where I'm breaking down computers, so that if I think I need to get the grinder to cut off a screw head or something like that, I have to physically walk over to the grinder to get it. That's going to remind me, it's going to be that cognitive break in my brain that says, oh yeah, I need to put my eye protection on as well. Little tricks like that you can do that will help you out in the long run. And the other thing that you need to be aware of, so Earl says we had safety meetings every morning offshore also. If you ever see a bad accident, you don't mind the repetitive process. Absolutely. Absolutely, man. I hear you. Because, yeah, it's not a good thing. Not a good thing. And as we used to say in the Navy, there aren't really true accidents. There's always something that caused a person to get injured. And we used to go through great pains to look at the events that led up to something happening and what could have been done to prevent that from happening. So good point, Earl. Now, the other thing that I wanted to bring up with eye protection, because, again, and this doesn't have to be just in hot climate like here in Florida, but frequently what can happen. Hey, Mike, great to have you here, man. Frequently what can happen is, you've got your eye protection on, you're sweating, you may have gotten some dirt and grime on your face and around your eyes beforehand. You got your gloves on and your gloves are a little bit dirty and your eyes are sweating, and you get that sweat in your eyes and you're going, oh man. And the next thing you know, you're doing something like this, right? And now you're potentially taking dirt and grime or medical particles that are on your finger or the side of your hand or something like that, and you're rubbing them in your eye. Or you're rubbing them, around this part of your eye so that when you sweat, the sweat carries it into your eye. And trust me, that's hard to not do, right? Because you don't think about that. Usually you're hot, you're sweating, you got the sweat rolling off of you. And you're not thinking about, you just, you do this. Now you've left a metal shard or something like that around your eyeball. And then next thing you know, it's in your eye. So, how do you prevent that from happening? Well, you consciously have to say, what's on my hand. It's like if you're wearing bright colored gloves and you go to reach up like this, the bright colored glove will probably get the attention of your mind so that you'll stop before you just rub your eye. But that's a tough one, because that's almost a reflexive thing to rub your eye when you got salt going down in it. And so you have to be consciously thinking, don't rub my eyes, don't rub my eyes, don't rub my eyes, because you have the risk of doing that. Now, the other thing that I would say with eye protection, and this one's tough for scrappers because, who's going to make this kind of investment and keep up with it, but having some sort of eye wash kind of capability. At the manufacturing plants that I've worked at, we would have eye wash stations. They might be standalone tanks of water that you'd pop cap off and stick your head down there and it would flood your eyes. It might be attached to the drinking water system. So there was, next to each bubbler, there would be an eye wash station. If you're a hobby scrapper and you're doing it in your garage or, your backyard or something like that, it gets a little more difficult. I would say at a minimum, you want to either have a garden hose standing by or some bottles of water standing by, so that if you have to, you can pull the cap off the bottle of water and pour it in your eye, or be able to get to a sink or a faucet where you can get water flushing through your eyes. So think about how you would flush out your eyes if you had something like that happen. So the next time you go to your garage or your workstation, whatever it might be, just look around and say to yourself, all right, if I get something in my eye, how am I going to rinse it out? What's my plan? And that can go a long way to helping you to, if you do get something in your eye, mitigating how bad it can be. So JR Cat says it's no fun getting your eyeball scrapped to get the iron out. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And he also says no fun to clean the parts of people out of the machines. Yeah, that's yeah. Unfortunately, I know that one too well. Okay, so eye protection. Any questions? Any suggestions? Go ahead and just drop a note down there on eye protection. And if you have your favorite kind of eye protection, go ahead and drop that. I've got 3 different types at the shark cage. I've got the glasses with the wings. I've got goggles, and then I've got the full face shield. Now, what I really would like to get, E-Waste Mike has one of these. It's kind of like a diving mask. It fits all around it's got a gasket that kind of goes around your face with a filter on it, so that it's a dust filter as well as the face mask. They're supposed to not fog up as much as other eye protection things. So I'm thinking about about looking into one of those. I may get one of those and just see if that's worth it. And if I get one, maybe I'll do a little video on it and share it with folks and just let people know if it's worth having something like that. So, all right. So enough of the safety discussion. We are going to move on to our industrial metal for the week. And it is time to go back and take a look at copper. All right, Timu, we're not going to advertise for you anymore here. And who's our algorithm stock picks? Yeah, we're not going to advertise for you on Google. So now that we got rid of the ads, again, these charts come from Kitco. I do not. Hey, Crack Coiner, great to have you here. I am not sponsored by Kitco. I'm not sponsored by any of these folks. Okay, so you don't need to worry about any sponsorship stuff going on here. But Kitco is another one of the companies that I have used when I have bought and sold physical gold and silver. They have charts on industrial metals that I like. So we shift over to Kitco for these. And these are the historical charts. You can see them over here, historical charts from Kitco. So we see for the 24-hour that copper, this is weird because they're saying, wait, let's refresh this a minute. Now we got to get rid of the Timu advertisements again. Okay. So they're saying here that for the 24-hour that copper is up 0.0016. But if you look at this chart, it sure looks like copper is, I mean, what am I missing here? You all tell me. The line starts here and it goes down here. So that looks like it's down to me. So I'm missing something here, obviously, in that chart. But I don't get too wrapped around the axle on 24-hour charts anyway, because, the near-term fluctuations happen all the time. So I don't worry about that too much. We can see here 30-day, looks like copper's trying to go back up again. If we look at the troughs are all moving up. If we look at the peaks are kind of moving up. So we see some upward movement in the last 30 days for copper. So that's a good thing. That's what we want to see happening. If we look at the 60-day, we see again the troughs are moving in the upward direction. The peaks, not much going on here. This peak at 390, that peak a little over 390. So, but with the troughs moving up and the peaks bouncing off this resistance at 390, we can sort of see that there's a resistance level here that it's going to be, usually when you hear people talk, when you hear the talking heads talk about resistance, what they're saying is the troughs keep bouncing off of a certain level here. And it's the market saying, yeah, it's not worth more than that. It's not worth more than that. But when it busts through that resistance, then it can kind of get moving. So interesting to see that resistance in the 60-day. Here we look at the 6-month, and we can see that for the 6-month period, the troughs dropped. We can see that we were dropping, and here's this resistance line that we were just talking about. So we went down below the resistance line. Now we're banging up against it, trying to get copper going again. So not sure. I think in the long term, we're going to get past that resistance and copper will go back up again. If we look at the 1 year, in the 1 year, we can see that we're up for the 1 year, which is good. Start here, we're up here. We got a great big fat arrow. We used to joke around when I was doing some engineering stuff. It's like the fatter your pencil, the easier it is to get the numbers to work. But this 1 year overall being up is good, but we're really not up a whole lot, right? We've got almost as much up here as we had down here. So, and then if we look at the 5 year, well, we've got we had the going into the COVID stuff. We have COVID, it drops because, the world shuts down. We start digging out of COVID. World's opening up, copper's coming back. It kind of corrects right here, and now it's starting to build back up again. So, hey, Tim, great to see you here, man. So, what's interesting is that right now, copper prices are above pre-COVID. So that's a good thing. And we hope that they'll continue. Now let's look at what's going on with the supply of copper. The London Metal Exchange, here's COMEX. I'm not going to talk about COMEX. Here's London Metal Exchange. We can see that overall the supply of copper has been dropping. Now it did climb a little bit, but now it's starting to drop again. So that's a good thing when we see the supply of copper dropping. We see that the 60-day, here's that drop again for the 60-day. The 6 month, we're kind of bouncing around a bit. The inventory drops, then it picks back up again, and then it drops again. And we look at this number here, this 50,000 line here. Oops, wrong button. This 50,000 line. It looks like that's they don't want to get below that. And if you look at the 1 year, you can see overall the London Metal Exchange inventory is dropping. It picks up again. It drops again here. Here's that 50,000 line. And then if we look at the 5-year London Metal Exchange, we look at these peaks and troughs tending in a overall downward direction here. So for the last 5 years, it sure looks like we've been consuming copper faster than we've been able to replenish it. Here's the 50,000 line right here. So we are at the lowest inventory levels that we've been at for the last 5 years. And so you might say to yourself, well, why aren't prices higher, right? If we go back up to prices, we see that the 5-year spot price is higher than it has been, but not as high as, it was. So why aren't prices higher? This is, this is the story. This is what we are trying to figure out, right? Why aren't the prices higher? Well, I want to send a big shout out and thank you to Scrapping Irish. He sent a very interesting article that coincided with a couple of other articles that I had looked at recently that was talking about how the EV industry is finding ways to use less copper. We've mentioned this a few times now over the last few months as we've been talking about copper. And one of the things that we cannot lose track of is how industrious engineers can be. If a particular commodity becomes really expensive or hard to get, engineers are motivated to try to figure out a way to use less of it or work around it or something like that. And we're starting to see that with copper in electric vehicles. They're figuring out ways to use less copper in the electric vehicles. Copper is still going to be important as green energies move forward, as we electrify the world. You still need to have a lot of copper, but there's a number of folks who are saying probably not going to need as much copper as we thought we were going to need. Now, that is countered by the reality that the places where copper is mined is also becoming more challenging. So they're having lots of trouble in Chile and Peru and places where there's big copper mines with the political unrest and the workers protesting and things like that. It becomes difficult to get copper from mining as well. So, hey, JCT, great to see you here, man. So we've got this sort of balancing going on where industry is trying to find ways to use less copper, but the miners are also mining less copper. So our recycling of copper is still going to be important. And I still firmly believe that in the long run, we're going to see copper scrap prices rise from what we're seeing right now. So my recommendation with your copper is always keep some behind. My general rule of thumb is to keep 10% behind and store that as a strategic reserve that I only sell if I absolutely have to for some financial reason, or waiting for the prices to get to some target price that I'm willing to let it go for. So if you're in the business of scrapping, whether as a hobby or as a small business, my recommendation is to sell what you need to in the way of copper. Insulated copper wire of various grades is a good thing to sell because it's not the higher grade number one or number two copper that you can more easily store up. So you sell your insulated copper wire to meet your cash flow requirements. You only sell your number two copper if you have to for cash flow requirements, and then don't sell all of it, keep 10% behind. And if at all possible, keep your number one copper back if you can, in order to hold on to that as an investment for the future. But of course, we're all different. We all have different reasons that we're doing this. Some of us don't have the luxury of space to store up a lot of copper. Some need to keep it moving for the finances. And as Gaz puts it, sell it and grab silver on the cheap. So, yeah, that's another way to look at it, right? It's all relative, isn't it? Hey, Patrick, great to have you here, man. Welcome. So, JR Cat is saying, hold, number 1 and 2. Yeah. So he'll be holding it. So I am doing what I am preaching here. I sell my insulated copper wire for cash flow, and right now I'm holding all of my number 2 and number 1 copper because I've been able to meet my cash flow requirements with other scrap that I'm moving. So if I do have to pick up a little bit of extra cash flow, then yeah, I'll sell some of the number 2 in order to make sure that I meet my numbers for the month. All right. Well, any questions or comments about copper, go ahead and drop them down in there. I know that some of you have got quite a bit of copper in reserve, which is really cool. There are some of us that are envious of the amount of copper that some of you all have out there. And if anybody wants to do a little bragging right now about how much copper you have, go for it, man. Go for it. HH Recycling, welcome. Great to see you. Doggy Bones, I don't know what you're talking about, but that wasn't me. So, yeah, I don't know. Don't know what that's all about, Doggy Bones, but that wasn't me. JR Cat, he says he's got 2,400 pounds. Very cool, man. That's awesome, man. 2,400 pounds. Wow. I had to weigh my copper reserve because I just keep throwing stuff in the bin, and I haven't weighed those bins for a while. So thinking I might weigh that up this week and see. Scrap It All, welcome. Great to see you. All right, so that was copper. Let's talk about, and this is, I made a note earlier about fair market value and trading the lead and the silver. that's leading us to our business note for the day. And our business note for the day are or is on the subject of bartering. So bartering is any time that you trade a good or a service for another good or service, and you don't have an actual exchange of money. So this week, as you were watching my videos, you saw where I entered into a bartering agreement with one of my viewers to trade the lead that I had for silver. So some of you may be thinking, man, that's great, because if you do that, you don't have to pay taxes. Well, here in the United States, that's not true. Here in the United States, when you barter, you are required to report the fair market value of the exchange. So here, let me go ahead and put this up for you. Might be a little bit difficult for you to read. This is off of the IRS website. So if anybody wants the link, let me know. I'll get you the link to this. But I wanted to clarify this. Bartering is an exchange of property or services. You must include in your income at the time received the fair market value of property or services you received in bartering. If you exchange services with another person and you both have agreed ahead of time on the value of the services, the value will be accepted as the fair market value, unless the value can be shown to be otherwise. So let's go back to what I did this week. This week, I had a certain amount of lead, 545 pounds. I had a client who wanted to buy it from me, but instead of giving me cash for it, they wanted to trade me in silver. So the first thing we did was we decided what the lead was worth. Then we decided what the silver was worth to make that compensation. So that's the fair market value. That fair market value needs to be reported on my taxes. So it goes into my spreadsheet, as something, as goods that I sold. And I will keep track of the fact that that was, traded in silver, so that my accountant can decide what form needs to get filled out, because you normally would fill those forms out. There's a different form. Generally, you report the income on a Schedule C, Form 1040, but there are other examples. So I make a note that I did this transaction, here's the fair market value, and then my CPA will decide what paperwork we need to do when it's time to submit to the IRS. Now, why do I bring this up? I bring this up because there are folks out there, I've seen channels on YouTube where there are people that are out there and they're saying, well, if you trade your scrap for silver or for the gold or something like that, you haven't exchanged any money, so you don't have to report it to the IRS. They're wrong, all right? Now, whether you choose to do that or not is up to you. You're the one who's got to decide what you're going to report on your taxes to the IRS. But I just wanted to make sure that people understood that any of those channels that are out there telling you you don't have to report the fair market value of the things that you bartered, they're wrong. They don't know what they're talking about, or they do know the right answer and they just don't want to admit the right answer. So I wanted to help get that record straight for people. What you do with your taxes is your business. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I don't ever want to have the IRS knocking at my door. So I have always told my accountant, if there's ever a question about do we report something or not, we report it, because I would much rather have the IRS give me money back than come to me at some point down the road and say, yeah, no, you owe us money. You're in trouble. That's just one organization I don't want to mess with. So it's a very important subject that a lot of people get confused over, or a lot of misinformation floating around out there. So I wanted to address that. And because I did a transaction like that this week, it was a lot of, it was a great opportunity to really talk that through with people. All right, so if you have any questions about bartering, feel free to drop them. Let me know, and if you want the link here for the IRS thing, let me know. I can send you that as well. Moving on to our next subject of the day, we're going to be talking about our stocks. And as you all know, I base my stock discussions on information that I get from the Value Line Investment Survey. They do not take any advertising. So all the information is pure data and analysis of the data. It's a great place to get unbiased information and analysis of that information. Again, analysis can be, they can make mistakes in their analysis, but at least they're not purposely biasing their analysis in order to make advertisers happy. All right, so this week, the industries that they reviewed were the apparel industry, the retail automotive industry, the retail store industry, the shoe industry, retail hard lines, retail soft lines, think clothing, electric utilities, West US, and asset management industry. After going through these, I found three that were really kind of interesting for our perspective as looking for income generating or dividend investments that are somewhat reasonably priced for us to get into. Unfortunately, none of them were in the automobile space that I think most people would have enjoyed talking about. They were all in the utilities, the electric utilities West space. So the first one that we're talking about here is Black Hills Corporation. You can see that they're offering 4.5% dividend, which is cool. We want to see at least 4%. So that's a nice number to pick up from them. This data is all valid as of the 21st of July. Their share price was $57.23. That's not a bad entry point for a dividend investment. As we've seen, we've had some that were, 100 plus. So 57 is not bad at all. They are qualified as a Div Zero. So you can see here 17 plus years of increasing dividends per share every year. They are not qualified for cash flow or earnings per share. If we take a look at what that looks like graphically, we can see that back here in 08 and 11, they had a couple of burbles, but overall they've been tracking up. And that's the direction we want to see these things move in. Their dividends, nice and smooth upward line, not real steep, but it's nice and smooth. So it's actually a reliable thing that you want when you're doing if you're investing for, future income. It's nice to have a good idea of how much they increase, not just that they do increase, but how much they increase every year, so that you have a reasonably good understanding of where it's going to happen. So what I like about the utilities industries is they tend to be pretty stable income or dividend generating, and they tend to be right in this 4% area that we want to see. So that's real nice. Now, Black Hills is the holding company for Black Hills Energy. They serve customers in Colorado, South Dakota, Wyoming, and Montana, Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado, Wyoming, and Arkansas. They do a little bit they have a coal mining subsidiary that helps with as they move, because they still use some amount of coal. They're moving out of that. So it gives you an idea of what these folks are all about. So that's Black Hills. The other company of interest is Edison International. Edison International is also at 4.5%. They're a little more expensive at $68.31. They are, that's a div 0 over there, by the way. It's hiding behind the, here, let me see if I can move that. There you go, div 0. So 17 plus years of increasing dividends per share, not qualified by earnings or cash flow per share. Oh, hey, we have a good look. So for those of you that want your Excel spreadsheet lesson for the day, whenever you see these hashtags in an Excel spreadsheet, it just means the cell isn't big enough to show the number. So let's see. And we just make it a little bit bigger. There we go. Now we can see the number. That's all that means. Now you can also grab all of the cells and have it auto size if you want to deal with that. All right, so let's get back to the stock itself, Edison International. Here's what Edison looked like. Now, what's interesting about Edison was they have this COVID hit, but otherwise they had a pretty smooth run here. So why would that be the case? Let's see, Edison. It's the holding company for Southern California Edison. They supply electricity to 5.2 million customers in the Central Coastal and Southern California area. Edison is also an energy services company. So they're working in SoCal. They've got commercial industrial clients, a mix of sources. Interesting, they're offering the same dividend as a company that was serving more towards the Midwest, but they had more of a hit here, probably because more of their customers were impacted by COVID, would be my suspicion, is what we see going on there. But that's another good potential for you for investment for your income. And then the third company that we're going to look at, Northwestern Energy, also in that 4.5. Right now they're at 4.6. They're at $59.16. So again, they are a little bit, they're paying just a little bit more, and their shares about the same. So roughly speaking, these three are all kind of in the range that you would, that you could pick either one that you could go with here. And they are qualified. This thing keeps getting in the way, but they are qualified as a div 0. So 17 years of increasing dividends per share, and not qualified for cash flow or earnings. If we look at that graphically, this is actually one of the smoother of the three. No real big hits or spikes anywhere along here. So yeah, this might be the better play here as far as being better managed, being able to stay on top of things, not being as sensitive to market swings and such. Let's see, Northwestern, who do they serve? Northwestern, they supply electricity and gas in the upper Midwest and Northwest. So Montana, South Dakota, Nebraska. I don't, is it the localities that they're serving that allows them to be a little smoother? Is it because they are managing things a little better than the other companies? We could do a deeper dive on all of that, but from the numbers, what this is telling me is that, yeah, these guys are, this of the three companies, this is probably the one that would be the better place to put your investment dollars. It costs about as much as any of the other two. It's giving you a little tiny bit more, but they have an overall smoother operating, as you can see from what's going on here. So you would sleep better at night, if you will, because you won't see as many gyrations going on with this one. An interesting stock opportunity here. Now, you might be asking, well, why utility stocks? What's that got to do with scrapping and recycling? And well, I mean, we all need electricity. We all need power, right? And those of you that are doing this for a business, if you are, depending upon what state you're in, if you're registered as a company, you can reach out to utility companies and work with them to get recycled materials from them to recycle. Here in Florida, you have to be a certified secondary metal recycler in order to scrap anything that would come from an industrial power grid, power line, power stations, substations, etc. So it's not something that would be open to a hobby scrapper to work with these companies. Now, large utility companies like this are going to probably put in place a number of things that make it somewhat challenging to get their material. You're going to have to go through some sort of screening process. They may have safety training that you're going to have to take. They may only want to work with really large scrap yards so that they know that the material will be handled, picked up, that kind of stuff. So, it might be a stretch to try to do some work with some of these larger utilities. But if you are a scrap business, even a small scrap business, if you are properly licensed and certified, there's no reason why you shouldn't try. The worst that's going to happen is they're going to say no. But if you try, you might find a really good client in some of these people. I'm negotiating with a couple of pretty large business organizations that are in my area. They haven't said no, so we're working through the details of how to go about doing it and that kind of stuff. So anyway, it's something to pay attention to outside of just the investment potential, that they could be a potential for you as a source as well. But you got to be ready. If you're going to talk to these people, make sure you understand what it is you're potentially getting yourself in for. And JR Cat makes a good point here with the transformers. One of the nice things about working, if you are able to work with any of these folks, is they will be able to tell you what's inside of the stuff, so that you are not getting around things like PCBs and other materials that you should not be dealing with. They'll know, they'll understand, they'll know what's inside of all the stuff that they have. And if it's any kind of hazmat, they're going to be able to tell you, and they're going to have other concerns and controls that they have to do when it comes to that kind of stuff. Anyway, so that's a very important note. How about Southern Natural Gas? Let's see. Southern's going to come up in a different episode, Earl. I'll go ahead and make a note here that you're interested in me looking at them. So when Southern comes up for renewal, or comes up for their, when they get looked at, I will certainly make sure to talk about them. Southern Natural Gas. And I don't have the index with me here, so to let you know how long that might be before we look at Southern, because they're not in this episode here. So this edition. But Southern's good company, so we definitely want to look at Southern when they come around. So yeah, Doggy Bones, I'll let everybody know for sure. I mean, that'll be a big announcement if I get one of those. So I will definitely, if they let me. Now that's the other thing, right? I always ask my clients before I reveal their name, their location, anything about them. I always ask if it's okay for me to use their name. So That's why you'll notice in some of my videos, I'm at the scrapyard and you can see the sign for the scrapyard. You can see their name all over the place. I've talked to the manager. He's cool with that. He actually likes the fact that I am that they're getting advertising from me. I have other clients that do not want me to say their name at all. So I always ask before I do that. Now, if they'll let me, I'll be happy to, I'll definitely share who they are if I negotiate a deal with them. If they don't let me, then I can probably share that I still got the deal. I just can't talk about who they are. So, Simon's asking about some algae energy company. Simon, if something comes up on the radar for Value Line that is using alternative sources like that, I'll be happy to dig into it and talk about it. One of the challenges with that is that a company like that probably does not have 17 years of data that we can look back at to see if they meet our criteria. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't look at them for more of an at-risk kind of investment. So yeah, I'll definitely look, and if something like that comes up on the Value Line Investment Survey, I will address it. If it doesn't come up on Value Line Investment Survey, but I can find reasonable, unbiased data, we can talk about that too. One of the things I'm messing around with right now are lithium companies, lithium mining companies. A lot of them are too new to have 17 years of data for us to go back to. They may not be covered in the Value Line Investment Survey. And so trying to find other places where I can get good unbiased data and information on them is a little bit difficult, but I'm digging into some lithium companies because I think that would be really interesting for us to talk about as that moves forward for us. Because there's some interesting players out there in the lithium world that could be fun to talk about. So lots of fun stuff to talk about this week. I hope you all had a good time. Yeah, Earl, no worries, man. I'm happy to do that. Simon, I'm happy to do that. A lot of times these aren't public companies, which further complicates things. So private company, you can't talk about the numbers because they're not going to put their numbers out there. That's the beauty of being a private company, right? No, you don't have to share your numbers with anybody. And it makes it harder for people to try to compete against you if they don't know what's going on inside the company. So, and I know because I used to work for a company that was a public company that got bought by and went private when they got bought. And it was really interesting, the changes that transpired when we became a private company, and all of the financials that I did and all of the discussions that we did, huge changes in the way we did things. Definitely interesting. And JR Cat's asking me about Huntington Ingalls. All right, let me make a note about that one as well. Huntington Ingalls. So I'll look for when they come up as well. All right, everybody, I had a great time. I hope you all did as well. Remember, if you have autoplay enabled, as soon as I turn off this stream, you will be taken right across the pond to Ireland, where we can join Scrapping Irish's live stream in motion. If you do not have autoplay enabled, then please, I encourage you to go search on YouTube for Scrapping Irish, or if you're already a subscriber of his, click on his button, go on over and join us at Scrapping Irish's live stream, where we can carry on the conversation and a little more interchange, as he always brings up folks on the panel. Lots of back and forth that goes on there, which always makes it interesting. Never know quite what's going to pop up when we're talking in the panel. So you all have an awesome week. Try to stay safe. Here in the U.S., we've got lots of weird weather going on all over the place. And tomorrow it's supposed to be storming all day. So I don't think I have any pickups tomorrow, so that'll be nice. The shark cage should be quite a bit cooler for me to work in tomorrow, assuming I don't get drowned on the way there. Have a safe week, everybody. We'll see you over on Scrapping Irish's live stream.